where I failed because I gave up learning to code 7 times. And what if I didn't get back up again on the 7th time?
That's true.
I would have been living a completely different life. I would have been depressed because I don't trust myself. This isn't what I really want to do. I want to be a businessman.
Upon finishing studies in the UK, he encountered a tech talent scarcity in venture capital. He devoted himself to learning coding. In just 6 months, he assisted IT graduates, securing software projects with his newfound skill.
Have you heard of this Korean drama called Startup? So they have an app where they built. It's something that helps blind people see using computer vision and AI. So you put your camera, you place it there and you say, oh, hey, that's a plant. You read out to the blind person, right? So I was like, freaking amazing. So this whole startup show really hit me hard because I was like, shit. So anyway, I started building a clone of that, and I had to figure things out as a self-taught developer. I had to figure it out. So that was my first project. I posted on LinkedIn. It went
blew up.
It blew the hell up.
All right, welcome to the 1% podcast, where we talk about how we self-improve 1% every day. So today I have a guest with me. His name is Derek. I think you guys know already.
Hey guys, I'm Derek.
And he's the founder of Sigma School.
And it's my first time on this podcast.
No, not really. So he was an accounting student and he worked in venture capital and the private equity industry, but made the jump to learn coding by himself.
Yep.
And started a school to teach people coding to get software developer jobs without a degree. So in this podcast, we're going to go through 3 things. So number 1 is how Derek managed to transition from finance to tech and get 6-figure projects that is worth 100,000 ringgit or even more without any experience. And then number 2, how did he lose 6 figures and lost roughly around 100,000 ringgit as well. And lastly, how Derek helped students to get from nothing to high-paying software developers. So thank you, Derek, for coming into this podcast.
Thanks for having me, Haris.
All right, so the first question, I think we just go back to the first thing that I want to talk about is you're in a finance background, right? Can you tell me a little bit about why you chose the finance industry first and what made you transition to learn coding by yourself?
So I think with a lot of young people, like when I was 18 years old, they didn't know what I really wanted to do, right? It's pretty common. People just go to uni for the sake of going to university. And for me back in the days, I was deciding to go into biotech. But typical Asian parents, my parents were like, my grades were very good. And they were like, you should go for something like more professional, like dentistry or medicine and stuff like that. And what happened to me was I realized that I actually wanted to do business. So after going for my biotech interviews, my medicine interviews, my dentistry interviews, I've done all of the interviews, by the way. After going for those, I sat down and I realized this isn't what I really want to do. I want to be a businessman, right? But I still had to go to uni. So I spoke to my mom and I spoke to a few relatives of mine, and they said that you should be, if you want to do business, you should go into a more specialized degree rather than a business degree because it's so general, you can't really do stuff with it, you can't get a job with it, right? So then they stumbled upon accounting and finance, where I could then do my professional papers like ACCA and ICAW. And that was pretty much my path ever since then. So to be a businessman, you need to know accounting, and that's why I chose an accounting degree. That's it. I have never done accounting my whole life. All my life, I've been a science student. I've been very, very intrigued with biology, evolution, chemistry. I've been always a science guy. But only when during that 18-year-old gap, I had like 2 months to decide what university degree I wanted to do. I just had to choose within 2 months. And I think it's flawed, and I'll talk about it later on. Why this is just so flawed. But this is my story anyways.
Right. So you were like a science student and then your parents were like, hey, why not go through something that is already very proven, traditional, accounting, have some certs that is recognized around the world,
so
right?
for them, it's if you want to go into science, you better go into dentistry or medicine. Nothing else matters.
Right?
Or if you go into business, you also need to do something that allows you to do a specialty rather than a general marketing degree or an international business degree, which is plentiful today, but they want me to go into something I can do a professional paper in.
Right. And then how do you feel when you were, in that kind of industry?
I was honestly just in the loop. I wasn't thinking too much like a typical 18-year-old. I'm like, okay, going to university, never questioned it. It was part of the path, and I was, I guess, blessed to have parents who were able to afford my university education. I didn't have to go into debt for those kind of things, which thank you, mom and dad, right? But I didn't feel anything. I felt like this was part of it, and it was always part of my parents' promise to me since I was a kid that they will hand me off, which means they will give me full independence only after university, which means as long as I'm still in university, I'm still under their roof, I'm still under their protection, I'm still under their care. So it's always been part of the path going to university. I've never once doubted myself not going to university. So I was always at ease with it, just going to uni. So if you could go 6 years back, the version of me that was in university 6 years back, I was a very happy guy. Happy, chill, focused on studies, gotten very good grades, even though my parents don't stress me out so much on the grade side of things. They did when I was younger, but when it comes to university, they just gave me complete freedom. So I was very competitive. I was doing pretty good with my grades, not super good. I got first class honors lah, so good enough. And then I've also been very active in clubs and societies. I've been joining. So I studied in UK. I was like in the organizing board of like 3 to 4 societies: Culture Society. We got sports. We got consulting. We got VC, and that's how I got into VC.
Then from VC itself, like how do you then learn about tech or your experience
so all this
far?
while, before even going to VC, I've always been, the two most competitive sectors in finance and in general, it's management consulting and investment banking. I've always been looking into these two back in days. I was like always grinding on their case studies and learning how it works and everything, right? But I realized this also isn't what I really wanted to do. That's when I realized about VC. I started reading about VC. I'm like, hey, this is the closest I can get to building startups as a finance student. Because back then, the way I was thinking wasn't like how we think now. The way we think now is, if I see something interested, I'm going to go get it. I don't care about my background anymore, right? Like for you as well, same thing. But back then, I was like, I need to do something related to my degree. If it's not related to my degree, I can't do it. That was my mindset back then. So the Derek Yee back then had to link everything back into finance, because I spent 4 years in finance. I need to be good at it. I need to do something related to it. I can't just leave it like that. That's how I went into VC, and that's how I realized that VC is actually very tied to startups, and that just opened up the world of startups to me. And even until today, the difference between, I guess, me and a lot of the self-taught developers is they by default go on the path of getting a job and all that. But for me, I started building stuff because I really wanted to be in the scene, and I guess that's what I went through lah.
Right. And then for those who don't know, VC is basically called venture capital, which is mainly a bunch of money that people collected to put into startups, or startups are basically like small businesses that wants to grow as fast as possible, right?
Yes. Yeah. So think about Grab in the early days, Facebook in the early days. If Mark Zuckerberg didn't get the first injection from Peter Thiel and those guys, right? He got a $500K USD injection when they were still a very baby-sized startup, right? So he needed the funds, and these guys, the investors, came in, gave the funds, and took some equity out of it, and in return, they both became rich when Facebook became successful.
Yeah, and at one point that you told yourself, like, hey, I'm in the VC industry, I see a lot of tech. It's like, what made you want to like jump out of it and start learning to code?
Okay, so this happened only... let me just be clear with one thing. All my life, I've never been a tech guy. I'm the worst guy when it comes to tech. Back in the days, in high school and all that. In primary school, there's computer classes.
Yeah.
You have to do some extra class in computer because the government wants us to be more tech savvy. I was always the last guy who left the room. Why? Because I couldn't figure out things like those kind of like Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint. Like, not just that, I think it was some homework lah. I just can't figure out some tech learning tools for kids. I couldn't figure it out. So yeah, I told myself future careers that I would never be in, tech was scratched out since young.
Damn,
Yep,
okay.
Yep. So that's a very interesting thing that got me realizing that, hey, you can't really predict that far in your life. Things will change. I'm the last guy people expect to go into tech. So long story short, what happened was when I was working in VC as an intern, this was back then after I graduated, I worked there for around 4 months. And the thing that opened up my doors for that internship was my venture capital student venture capitalist experience in UK. When I was literally, as a student, I was like getting people to pitch me ideas to decide whether or not to fund them. And I was doing due diligence, I was doing deal sourcing, I was doing so many things, right? But when I went to the VC, I was just an intern. So even as a student venture capitalist, I got to see so much more because I was starting up the VC fund in my university. So I got to see everything from 0 to 1. And I was like, freaking amazing. That was a very good experience. Long story. Okay, let me get back to the topic. So during my internship, I started organizing a lot of events for, because VCs have to organize events to look out for startups, and startups organize events so that founders can meet their tech partners and all that. And out of one of the event, I remember very clearly, everybody needed to put a tag on themselves. So like a color, like, thanks for coming to this event, Haris. So there's 3 colors. I forgot the colors, but I think it was yellow, blue, and green. Yellow for investors, blue for tech people, green for business people, something like that. I don't remember the colors specifically. So everyone has a tag on the clothes. And I was part of the organizing team, which means that I had access to who's who what colors they should get. And it was so brutally obvious to me back then that there were, for every one tech person, there's like 7 to 8 business guys.
Damn.
And during the networking session, everybody was just, all the business people, they were just fumbling around tech people, trying to pitch them to, hey, join my startup, please be my co-founder, work for free, stuff like that. And I'm just like, the demand and supply here is crazy. And well, some people may be thinking now, what about the other color, the investor color? Shouldn't I be more interested to be part of the investor group? Nope, I was not. Even though they were the rich guys who sat there and everyone went to pitch to them, I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be that guy to build something from scratch, even if it means eating shit every day. I wanted to do that rather than just sitting there, because I interview a lot of founders, and the kind of passion I see in their eyes, it gets me excited to go to work, seeing what they do rather than what I do on my computer, which is, running spreadsheets and doing research. I didn't like it at all. I wanted to be the guy in the action. And that's the first one. And during that same event, see, I'm pitching for events now, but even during the same event, I met a guy he's an indie hacker, something like a micro SaaS kind of guy. He built this software. He's a self-taught coder as well. He built this software, and he was serving around 100,000 ringgit in terms of revenue every single month. Every single month.
Damn.
One guy built a system. It was some video editing micro SaaS. I never heard of it. I've forgotten the name now as well. But the point is, I don't even know if he was bullshitting me, but this fact itself, it just struck something in me. I'm just like, number one, he's self-taught. He didn't have a degree. If this guy can do it, and he wasn't special, he was a normal ass guy. I was like, if this guy can do it, let me try. I don't know if I can, but let me try. So that struck something in me. Second thing, 100K a month, build once, scale forever. What other industry allows me to do that? Nothing but tech. I think you and I both know today that tech is the thing that is the most reliable, even more reliable than humans. Ask them to do this. As long as you get the algorithms right, the steps clear, they will get it done properly. Doesn't matter if they're no mood, no whatever, no issues, right? So I was like, okay, that's where tech, it has its edge, and that's why I wanted to go all in into tech. Two reasons to summarize: demand and supply, just based on the number of the ratio between business people and tech people. And number two would be the opportunity to build something once, scale it forever. And these two things inspired me to start going into tech.
Right. So I think, like, for those who are listening, right, like mainly in, I would say, the startup space, there's 3 types of people, right? Investor, business people, and tech people. And the tech people is also that I agree that there's a lot of demand. There's a lot of people with ideas, but they can't execute it, right? Then from there, right, like, how was your experience then learning by yourself, learning to code?
Sorry, before I go there, one thing I remembered? I remember this right now. Back then, I always wanted to do business. And there were a lot of pretty good business people in Malaysia. I wasn't one of them. So my strategy was to build myself as a CTO. So that I could be one of those guys where business people came and begged me to be their partner. That was a big driving force for me. Because I was like, I don't know business, and I probably can't build $1 million business because I have no experience. I was just a junior. But I sure as hell can learn how to build software for these business guys and learn from them. That was my goal back in the days. I remember very clearly now. Yeah, sorry, let's go back to your question.
Well, yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's a good strategy because a lot of people are looking for tech people.
Yep.
And for yourself, you're not like I learned a computer science degree kind of person, right? You're just like, I want to build tech, I want to scale it, I want to, earn a lot of money from that as well, right?
Yep.
And then from there, it's like, how was like learning code by yourself? Because you had to learn, because in order for you to be a CTO, you need to learn tech, right?
Yep.
So how was the experience and how long was it?
The whole thing, I would say 8 to 12 months. So this is also when I met my previous business partner, Ming. He played a big role in my journey learning to code. But in the first 6 months, I was all alone. The journey, I think, was fairly typical. Googling, learn to code, 101, right? Stumbled upon a lot of interesting materials like Odin Project, CS50, Free Code Camp, Codecademy. I've done all of it, trust me. I've done all of it again and again and again. Not once, but like couple times. And to a certain extent, and this was 6 months in, I just grilled the shit out of myself doing this few platforms again and again and again. The stumbling point for me was whenever I get stuck on one material, instead of solving that material, I move on to the next platform. thinking and feeling productive. But this is what James Clear, the guy by Atomic Habits, he calls this passive learning, which means that when you learn and when you get stuck with something, you just move on to learn something else and you feel like you're progressing. But at the end of 6 months, I could not build anything. So it was a difficult journey for me because I gave up a couple of times as well, because I was like, oh my goodness, this is tough, right? And back then, 6 months, if you're wondering how did I sustain myself, I was staying with my parents, so that helped a lot. But I was also doing another side business on the side, which is selling used calculators. So this is a story for another day, but just to share as well, this is how I sustained for those 6 months. I was making decent income, around 3K per month, something like that. Okay lah, I mean, entry level kind of salaries. So that's when I thought, okay, I can handle this a bit longer, but I'm not going to do this calculator thing forever, and I need to start monetizing my skills. And that was when I started meeting Ming, and I think we can keep that for later lah.
Right.
Yeah.
Then in these 8 to 12 months, right, like what got you out of learning? Because you had to say, okay, I'm good enough.
Yep.
What made you like saying I'm good enough and I'm going to start building or even earning from building tech?
That's a good one, right? So I've always wanted to be the tech guy. 6 months in, it was difficult. I was low-key depressed. I didn't want to go out. Like, honestly, like, my friends asked me out. So back then, I had a lot of friends. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I'm proud to say this, but I had a lot of friends. This was during uni or pre-university days, or even slightly after university. I had a lot of friends, like, to a certain extent where I can say that during one of my birthdays, I had 8 separate celebrations for me. Back then.
Damn!
Right?
Yeah.
Now I barely get one. Okay, but...
Okay, I celebrate.
No joke.
Celebrate.
Right. So it was a scary path, because that's when I realized how much people root for you when you're like them. And the moment you start doing something different, like, because I was starting to learn the code and I was like jumping internships over internships, and I remember one of my best friends was telling me, there you go, on another internship again. Right? He was looking at me in that belittling eye, like, why are you doing this? You got a degree, get a job. Right? Be productive. What are you doing? He gave me that kind of belittling look. And he wasn't the only one. And that's when I started cutting a lot of ties with these friends of mine. Not deliberately, but it's just over time. I just didn't enjoy spending time with them because it's just fundamentally different. They're like, oh, you gotta go to uni, and hey, look at my job. I'm making 4K now. Haha, you're making... What are you doing? What are you doing? Right? They keep throwing this at me. And like, are you sure you can compete with computer science guys? I have a friend who's a coder and he's very good. He got a job. Are you sure you can compete with people like him? I just didn't like it. Sorry, where were we again?
So how do you say that, okay, this is enough after like 12 months? And then you started to,
So I went on my solo hustle, just all alone. Like I said, depressed myself, everything, no friends, just me, myself, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. coding every day. That whole period lasted for 6 months. Then that's when I met Ming, my previous co-founder, and he wasn't successful by any means, okay, but he was also a self-taught developer, and he was also managing software projects. He was also building his own tech startups, and we both aligned very well in many segments. So he brought me on board, and he was running this community called the Hacker Collective, which was just a community of hackers. Hackers doesn't mean people who hack PCs. Hackers are people who want to find special, no, not just building stuff. It could be a hacker in anything. Basically, people who think out of the box, do things differently. Here, Steve Jobs, here's to the crazy ones. We're building a community of people. Doesn't need to be tech. It can be in legal, it could be in food tech, it could be anywhere. So I joined him, and he was just too busy. He couldn't handle this. So because he was busy with his software project. So I went in there as a junior. Just imagine my level at coding back then, I would say probably front-end DOM, I'm good, and a little bit of back-end. So I could build my own APIs. Right. That's it. I haven't done any proper deployment of any full-stack application. So that's my level back then. So he recruited me on board to be somewhat of a partner, to kind of this joint venture and then build this together. I'll lead the marketing, business, and operations side, and basically I lead everything, and he's just on the back end supporting me whenever there's technical needs. So we did that and I was like, okay, sounds like a no-brainer. Wait, sorry, before this, he actually offered me to be an intern first, to be a developer, to be a developer intern building in Vue.js, I remember, right? He offered me an internship salary, but I was like, no, this isn't what I want. Then he gave me 2 offers. Like, he said, okay, if you're more keen on the business side, why not we join hands and you work on the business side? So that's when I was like, okay, business side. I was like, okay, I can do the business while learning to code, which was a win for me as well. So I was like, okay, I took the offer, I did it with him, and we struggled to monetize because it was a community, right? It was us. We had to create content, we had to organize events, and then freaking COVID hit. at that time.
Oh, right.
Which I guess in hindsight is a good thing because that taught me how to start running ads and making money online. That was my first kind of journey into tech/digital entrepreneurship.
Right.
And that's when I got out of... I was still coding, to be honest with you. At that point, I was still coding. I only got out of coding when I started landing bigger and bigger projects that I couldn't handle myself. Then I started having to hire people. So this was after the 12 months, like I mentioned.
Yeah, maybe you can talk about how do you land these kind of jobs, because I think for people listening, right, you learn coding by yourself 6 months. It's very tough, right?
Yep, very
and
tough.
because there's no one guiding you, and then after that you tried on your own to partner with Ming, and at the same time you also want to learn business, right?
Yep.
So you learn business, you're learning code, and then from then on, how do you then land projects from there?
Right. So for a lot of, I think, early stage developers, what they will face is this thing called imposter syndrome. Like you said, 6 months only. Are you really going to close 6-figure projects in 6 months? And I had to correct you that it was 6 months was when I was learning myself. Then it was
yes.
around 9 months where I started monetizing and just small monetizing stuff. This was when a CS graduate friend of mine came to me and asked me to coach him. That's how I monetize, by coaching students. And that's when I realized, CS graduate and I'm teaching you? What the hell, right? That's when I realized that. But still small money there, 100 ringgit per hour kind of thing. That it was only after 12 months where I got my first bigger project, which is around 100K. Your question was, how did I do it, right? And my answer was imposter syndrome. It's very hard to get it. So that's why Ming played a big role as well. Because I had him on I still paid him anyways. I still paid him. But the point was, he was there for me in a sense where I knew that I myself could never serve this project on my own. He was, at that point, 3 years in his self-taught journey, doing projects and all that. So he served multiple projects and he could serve it. So I had that confidence in him. And that's what gave me the confidence to then go out there and sell to my heart's content. I sold the shit out of it. And I was like, okay, hey, it's very simple, right? Putting myself out there, telling people, I've been telling everyone I've been coding, right? So some of my, this is like friends and mutual friends who came to me to say that, hey, I need this software to be built. Can I pay you some money to build it, right? So the first one we built, the first one I did was just for a friend of a friend. It was a landing page, simple project, 10K. I built it myself and I call it a day. The next one was a small MVP project for a tech startup where we had to do login, log out, had to do transactions, add to cart. There was a lot of stuff, right? And that's how we went on from there. Because as the project started to scale, they wanted to add more and more features. The size became bigger, and I had to hire people. And that's when I started to really monetize it. And I was like, okay, wow, I can make money from this. So in summary, 2 things. From coaching computer science graduates to serving projects. These 2 things got me realizing that I could monetize my skills. And I did apply for jobs at that point of time. But when I saw these projects, I was just like, I'd rather just focus on what I was good at, which was doing projects. I didn't think so much. I was like, okay, I had a project now, it's worth 100K. 100K can buy me around 6 months of runway for me back then. So I was like, okay lah. I don't have to think about jobs anymore for 6 months. So I just focused and just started growing from there.
Right. And then at the same time, like, you were landing jobs like 6 figures, and I believe that was your first time looking at 6 figures projects, correct? So were there any point of time where you didn't earn or was there like something that you learned while getting these projects? Because 100K is a lot, right? But do you get...
let's clarify. It's not 100K upfront.
Yes.
It's a 100K sized project, but
Yep.
they pay upon milestones, which means I
Definitely.
don't see that money.
Right.
I see it every few months. So it's
Right.
like 20K per month kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So then, I think for those who are interested on how to get this kind of like projects, like how do you do it other than having the people to serve it? How do you get these clients, these people who's like, hey, I can pay you 20K per month?
Back then, I was just relying on my own connections. I had a lot of friends. And in hindsight, a lot of it was just from my connections. Connections meaning when I go out. In fact, the way I met Ming was also through events. I was very active going out, meeting people, telling people I'm doing it. So I think the moral story here is putting yourself out there. And almost all my deals were people coming to me. Almost all of it. People coming to me. One thing I did last time also, when I was learning to code, I built this, the Noongil startup app. The startup app where it's from this Korean drama. So have you heard of this Korean drama called Startup?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
so they have an app where they built. It's something that helps blind people see using computer vision and AI, right? So you put your camera, you place it there, and you say, "Oh, hey, that's a plant." You read out to the blind person,
Right.
right? So I was like, freaking amazing. And that was also a period of time where I was going through my breakup. So this whole startup show really hit me hard because I was like, shit. I went through a breakup because I wanted to build my own startup, and this thing hit me. I was so aligned with that show, and it was just wow, I loved it. So anyway, so I started building a clone of that. And I had to figure things out as a self-taught developer. I had to figure it out like from scratch. How do I? So that was a project I gave myself. How do you build something like this from scratch on your own without following tutorials? Just yourself and your VS Code. That's it. And that's how I started building it from scratch. I did it in Vue.js, and I connected to some, I forgot what's it called, TensorFlow.js, and this thing called Coco SSD. It was one of their libraries, the integrated libraries, and that's it. I had to do my own front end UI design as well, because what they did was, let's say if this is a plant, it won't just say it's a plant. It would draw a box on the plant and say to how many percent confidence that this is a plant, 90% or whatever. So I had to connect to the APIs and build that whole front end for that. So that was my first project. I posted on LinkedIn. It went
Blew up.
It blew the hell up, right? In hindsight, I should have done more content back then, but I was just too busy, and I wasn't really going down the tech path. It was just a fun project for me, because at that point, no matter how much I liked building tech, Ming was the tech guy. I had him building the tech. So if both of us did tech, I would just be an unproductive tech guy, because he's always better than me in tech, and business was struggling. So that's why I started pivoting to the business side, and that's why deals started coming in, and I started trying to close them with the confidence that I had someone experienced who's able to serve it even in times of difficulty. However, let me bring you to my next point. Ming actually didn't do much in the project. All he did was he was a figure that gave me the confidence. He was a figure on behind the scenes that gave me the confidence to sell to my heart's extent. But when it comes to serving the projects, I actually didn't need him. From project management to UI UX to everything, right? I did it all on my own. Then that's when I realized, wow, I could do it myself, and I knew how to manage developers because of my experience, and I knew how to do Figma because I think I didn't share this just now, because throughout my journey learning to code in that whole 12 months, I actually gave up a couple of times to learn things like marketing and design, because I was just very insecure with my tech skills.
So you were learning a lot of skills, right? From design, marketing, and mainly coding
Project management as well.
Project management as well, right?
I was all over. So that's the thing about coding. Coding takes forever. But for design and marketing, I'm not belittling those. I'm definitely not belittling, so please don't get it out of context. But for those things, it's less, I would say, computational intensive, where you don't have to train your brain so much. You could get to a production ready level with very little resources, whereas with coding, you really need to crack your head, and you need to train that programming muscle in your head. It's not something you get in one day. No one can get programming in one day. They need to go through a series of trial and error.
Yeah. Coding itself, I don't mean to make it very hard or sound very hard, but it is very hard, because it is something that you have to change your mindset towards to, in terms of making it more logical.
Yes.
Because computers are...
And this is one of the reasons why I think coding will always be in demand, because there is a level of barrier for you to become a proper developer. It's not something that someone can just, something that I really dislike, and I have to be honest here, it's with corporate training programs and stuff like that, saying things like, you can learn to code in 3 days, let me teach you Python in 3 days. No, you're not learning to code. You're learning some basic syntax of Python, but show me what you can build. They can't build shit in 3 days. They can't. And that's just the realities of things. And people who pay money for this kind of 3-day course, I've seen 3-day course, they charge 3,000 ringgit, and people pay because, the Alex Hormozi value stack, right? Same end goal, shorter amount of time to achieve it, they can charge higher prices. But to me, when I see it, just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I've taught in this kind of courses before, and I would say it's not realistic to understand a lot of things within a very short period of time. I'm not belittling any other than tech. Tech is very hard, but design or marketing, it's simpler because it's visual.
You could get to doing and producing output in 3 to 7 days. Probably, I'm not saying you'll be good, but you can do something. With coding, you probably can't. You can't do much impressive stuff, like production ready stuff. Probably can do some small.
And
stuff.
it's also harder to understand what you did. Versus design and marketing, where it's like, it's simpler than coding itself.
Very careful here.
Yeah. So, in your experience of getting projects, I believe there was a story that you had lost roughly around 6 figures.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
mid to high six figures.
Yeah.
It wasn't in one incident, so I gotta be clear. It was within a span of a year. Okay, so fast forward. This was after. So I've talked about my journey learning to code. I didn't really talk about why I didn't choose to go to a boot camp. I chose to self-taught myself.
Right.
But long story short, it was because I was broke. So I can skip through that topic. So I didn't go through a boot camp. I learned myself. I started landing projects. Started teaching students how to code. Started running the Hacker Collective. Having some more students coming in. We used to do weekend classes where people join for once a week and learn coding. That kind of thing. I was the main coach teaching them part time. Then I started landing more projects. Okay, and that's where we started having decent cash flow. We had good cash flow, like not super good also lah. I'm not gonna talk about numbers,
Profitable. Is it profitable?
but healthily profitable,
Okay,
right? Let's put it that
that's
way.
great.
We were
Yeah.
healthily profitable. We had like 15 people under our payroll. We were doing okay in the grand scheme of things. And I was carrying the boat when it came to the finances. I was bringing in all the cash flow, and that's something that I'm very proud of today, because and that gave me the confidence that I'm able to bring a business from zero to something. And that's how, and I proved it when it came to Sigma School. I did Sigma School from scratch, and I still brought it from 0 to 7 figures, and I could do it again. And that's something I'm very proud about. But hey, let's bring us back to the point here. And the question was,
How do you lose so much money in the
yes.
span of
So
a year,
again,
I would
I gained
say?
the confidence to build software. Things were going okay. We were profitable. Then it hit. Okay. Back then, Ming and I, both of us, we are not from the traditional tech background. We were not actual tech people. You know, actual real tech people. You know what they do, right? They build software and they refactor the shit out of software, which means everything that can be automated, they automate it. Everything that can be refactored, they'll by default go and clean the code up. That's what you know. That's a good developer. But for us, we were not like that. Both of us were very business inclined. Both of us focused a lot on getting deals, on business. That's where we got itchy. That's where we started asking ourselves, why did we come to this industry in the first place? Was it to get a job? Was it to serve projects? No, it wasn't. We came in because we wanted to build the next tech startup. That's when it happened. Then Ming is a guy who has a lot of ideas, and that's something I respect about him, right? But with tons of ideas come tons of responsibilities. With every idea, there's this chart that I sent to you before, right? If you have one idea, it's connection between 1 to 1.
Yeah.
2 ideas, you go triangle, three connections. 3 ideas is like 6 connections. It scales exponentially. By the time you have 70 ideas, you have like 1,000 connections. You have a lot of things to handle. So we didn't believe in the thing less is more back in the days. We just started throwing the kind of an analogy that Ming gave me was rolling snowballs, which means that let's say there were 10 ideas that they were good. We had a lot of ideas, honestly speaking, where we had like a streetwear business idea, we had a logistics platform idea, we did a lot of things. And the beauty about it last time was we actually co-founded these businesses with other business people. So they gave us a small equity, around 20%, and we had to build right? So that's where it went downhill So for those projects that people paid us to build, we were making money, obviously, right? For a lot of our internal projects, right? Wow, we had a entrepreneur matching platform. We had a like a Bumble but for jobs, something like that. We had a lot of things. We have a learning platform where it was a social learning platform. This is the one that I invested a lot of my time and money in. A social learning platform. It's like the LMS that I'm building now, but on steroids. Right. But the problem was back then we didn't have the proper product knowledge to do it. We were tech guys, no doubt, but we didn't have the product knowledge, meaning writing documentation for product, drawing out the Figma, drawing out wireframes, drawing out the user journey and user flows. We didn't have any of those. The user stories, we didn't have any of those. We were like, I have an idea. Let me sketch it out. Let's build it. We were doing like that.
Right.
And with that comes messiness, and it comes a loss of single source of truth. In tech, it's very important to have a single source of truth to know that, hey, when things are messy, who do we refer to? So developers need a single source of truth, and without that single source of truth, they will struggle and they will ask, what's next? What should happen when I click here? Because everything was true, written. Nothing was written, nothing was documented. It was very verbal. So when one developer left, or maybe we replaced with another developer, nothing gets passed on. Yeah, and that's, I guess, one of the most painful journey, because we were building like 6-7 startups at a go. Okay, none of them became really production ready. Right. And we spent a lot of money hiring developers, marketing it, doing landing pages, stuff like that. So that got us to got me to a certain level of expertise when it comes to pre-launching stuff. Back then, I was like launching something every month kind of thing. The issue, so I think it's okay, but the issue here was with seeing it through. Launching is easy. Getting people excited, we were good, getting people signing up, people sharing our stuff, we were pretty okay with it. But when it comes to actually building it so it's able to launch, nope, it wasn't able to launch, and we didn't, and that's when 7 projects means around 7 developers at least, right? So 7 developers were doing projects that were not giving us cash flow. And that's when it started hitting, because you do the math, one developer, 4K, for example, 7 means
28K.
30 plus K, for example, if you count in all the EPF and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So it's very high. Actually, it was very, very high. So for us back then, it was very high. For projects that were not profitable.
Right.
And yeah. So that's how we spent a lot of money. And until I decided to pull the plug and say that this isn't going to work anymore, we should build something that's profitable. So back then, our software arm was profitable. Our education arm was profitable. And these 2 arms were funding all 7 projects.
Right.
We did a lot, like financial intelligence app. We did so many things. But yeah, no documentation, no user flows, no Figma. That's why I always tell developers it's so important if you want to build your own tech startup. The tech is important, but if you don't have the right product knowledge, don't have the right documentation and UI UX, yeah, it cannot. It's not the developer's fault. It's just that the thing is not planned well.
Right. Yeah. I think that for a lot of people who are trying to build their own thing, the idea will always be something that you execute.
Yep.
But it's just that how are you going to sustain it in the long term?
Yep.
And if you don't document it, have a structure behind it, have process behind it, that's where you see the falls.
Yep.
And especially if you are building 7 projects at the same time.
It's crazy. Even one is enough to kill you
It
if you're
is,
doing
it
it
is.
properly. That's
Yeah.
why that's kind of when I realized focus. Always focus on one baby. Because
Yeah.
if you think about it, 7 startups, they're all your babies. You're feeding them 3K every month. It's all your
Yeah.
babies. You gotta take care of them. But how can you spread out your attention to 7 babies? Focus on one baby. Make this baby like the healthiest baby out there. Make it like Usain Bolt level baby. You know what I'm saying? Make it
Exactly.
really healthy and really good. Then that baby will grow up to be a good adult and give you some cash flow. Then you can have more babies after that.
Right.
Get one to work first. That's the thing that I learned. So yeah, if I did the math, 30K plus per month. We did this for 1 year plus, so it was, do the math, like 30K times 1 year, 12 months. And then
360, yeah.
that's just for the tech side. So we also had marketing.
Right.
Do the math there, it's around there lah.
Yeah. So I think it is a very expensive lesson that you learned, right? But I think that will make you a better entrepreneur, right? And business person in the future, because you get more focus, and once you focus on one thing, then you get better at it. So what made you focus, or what made you kill all the babies and start a new one called Sigma School?
So this was when I knew that the education side was monetizing. I knew that people always needed education. And I knew that there was a gap with education. Employers were always coming to us looking for talents, and students were always ready to pay us money. Last time we used to charge 300 ringgit per month.
That's
Then we
cheap.
made it 400 ringgit per month. People still paid. 500, people still paid. 700, people stopped paying. Then I was like, okay, if people have to pay us every month and they drop out, they drop out when they're not ready to pay. I'm like, when it comes to programming, you need to have, it's not easy. So you need to use something to tie them and make them more committed. So I started researching about the different kind of models with education. Because if you think about it, today, a lot of educational institutions, universities are a multi-billion-dollar industry. And unemployment rates in Malaysia, this was back in 2020, was around 50%, which means 1 in every 2 graduate were either, and by the way, 50% unemployed, another 50%, so out of those who were employed, 50% of those who were unemployed were underemployed, which means that, let's say you're a doctor, you're now working in 7-Eleven. That's underemployment.
Right.
So they were employed but not employed for what they studied for. That's what got me thinking again. If universities are not held accountable to the success of their students getting jobs, because why do you go to universities? It's to get a job, right? Let's put it aside. I'm sure there are people who go to universities to be specialists, to be PhD. Those are fine. That's what universities are for. But if you're talking about getting a job, then shouldn't they be held accountable to get jobs for students? They should. And that's when I got me thinking that there's this model in the US. It's called Lambda School, right? So in Lambda School, what they did was pay me only when you get a job. So that model didn't really work because you saw the scandals with Lambda School, right? It didn't really work because it was very hard to just hold people accountable because they're not paying anything today, right? And after they get something, they may think that, well, I got it not because of you, because of me. Then
Yeah.
they get unhappy, and then they sue the company, and then you know, it's just a very messy thing. So I think they started off on a good start. The seed there makes sense. Pay me only when you get a job, and then I can monetize through refer. I get a lot of students coming in, I train them up, and I can monetize through, you know, job matching and stuff like that. So they started off to a good start, and I think fundamentally it's sound. So I wanted to kind of tweak this model a little bit and say that instead of not charging anything and only charge you, and they charge a lot, they charge at 20% of your salary up to a level of around 20,000 USD,
Yeah.
right? Which is a lot. There's 100k ringgit, right? That's like a whole ass degree there. I said, instead of doing that, and that didn't work, instead of doing that, why don't I just charge them lower, make it more affordable to even come in the first place? And I say that, and also it gives them a sense of commitment, because they pay the money, they have to be in now. And I say that I'll give you your money back if you don't get a job. So I tweaked the model a little bit, and that's how I started. So the first one we started in, I started with an ad spend of around 4,000 ringgit. We made 40 plus K ringgit in the first month itself, without even solving much of the curriculum and the learning portal and whatever. And that's when I realized there is a demand for this. There is a demand for this. People would pay money for this. Now we just need to do this and see how we can serve more and get more success stories. And that's how we started.
Nice. So I think where getting the institutions or education institutions getting accountable is something that they don't do.
Yeah.
They just like, okay, we are recognized and you join us, and after that we don't really follow through on how your progress in terms of, you know, job matching or job employment as well, right? So I think for me, it's like why I go through a bootcamp is because it's not because of the job thing. It's more towards like it's short and it's something that you will learn that is more real world. And I think we both talked to university people where they ask us to teach at their university, or they propose because they are lacking the real world
Yes.
experience, right?
Yes, straight
Yeah.
up. And a bootcamp helps you summarize that, right? So I think you went the bootcamp path, and I think you shared in a previous podcast about how it helped you speed up your learning experience. And for me, I didn't go the bootcamp path. That's why it took me so long.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, I don't know if anyone watching this believes in alternate universes, but there is an alternate universe where I failed. Because I gave up learning to code 7 times. And what if I didn't get back up again on the 7th time?
That's true.
I would have been living a completely different life. I would have been depressed because I don't trust myself. So I'm like, hey, if you're able to pay someone this money to get a certain level of confidence and accountability that you achieve your goals, to become in this lifetime a developer in this lifetime, right, to reduce the chances of you failing, is it not worth a few $1,000s? I think it's worth it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's worth it, and it's able to show you results fast as well. We're not asking for 40 years or 4 years like a uni degree. We're asking for 4 months. Commit to it for 4 months and see the results yourself. So that's when I realized that, yeah, there are people out there who are struggling like me, and this is something that I would pay for back in the days, because this is affordable now. Back then, the only options I had was like 15,000 ringgit boot camps,
very
which
expensive.
is a bit more expensive for a fresh graduate for me last time. So that's why we started implementing scholarships now for people under the age of 26, because that's when they can't afford it, right? But for people above the age of 26, we're going to assume that you've worked for a few years, you have some savings saved up, and you're looking for the sake of career transition, which means you can survive today with or without us, but this is for career transition. But for the people below 26 years old, we believe that they haven't even gotten their first job. How are they going to pay for it? So we're hoping to make it more affordable for them to even join us in the first place. And that's how we plan to scale this model globally.
Exactly. So, and then for those who are listening, right, like why should I join a coding bootcamp? Why not like join a university? It's recognized. There's, you know, professors, and there is a building,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Why join a coding bootcamp where it's like shorter, cheaper?
So understanding the pros and cons would be very important. I mean, look at it this way, right? 4 years in university, you can split yourself, A/B test yourself. And the thing about life is you can't really A/B test yourself. You only have one life. You can't, at this point in time, split Haris into 2. One Haris do this, one Haris do that. So there's always going to be this sense of bias remorse when it comes to life, because you never really know what could have happened. So you just need to be very happy with the choices you made. You need to be able to sleep at night with the choices you made. So, but if we were to just theoretically A/B test myself, right? 2 guys, not me. I mean 2 guys. One A/B test one guy, and put this guy through a path of 2 journeys. One journey, he goes through 4 years of university. One journey, he learns through a coding bootcamp, a 4-month coding bootcamp. Let's put it this way, okay? University typical, right? 4 years university. Hopefully get a job at the end of the day, and then after 4 years get an entry level 3k ringgit job. That's average. Okay, so let's not go far and talk about big things like, okay, average. Another guy, spends 4 years in 4 months. Sorry, my bad. 4 months in a coding bootcamp. Works for free. Hear me out. Works for free for 3 months to get real world experience. Get an internship where they finally pay you 1,000 ringgit per month. So it's 4 months plus 3 months plus 3 months. That's how much? 10 months. And then get a job after that. So after 10 months, you got a full-time job at 3K per month. Okay, so you're thinking, oh, okay lah, so you're still getting a 3K job and you have to work for free? No, Mr. Whatever. Look, go to university, you have to spend 4 years in university, and when you come out, you're a fresh grad. But Mr. B, who went through the bootcamp path, now has 4 years of working experience. His salary is probably around 7K already. And when you graduate Mr. A, he's going to be a senior, with or without a uni degree. So I'm just like, and Mr. B is not in debt. That's the best part. Mr. A is in debt. No experience, entry-level guy in debt. Mr. B, have experience, not in debt. He is your senior at the end of 4 years. It's a win-win to me. Honestly, it sounds like, it doesn't make sense. Of course, this is assuming you're just aiming for a job in tech, right? If you're looking to go into like PhD and all that, right? No choice, you got to go the Mr. A's path because PhDs require a uni degree. And yeah, I rest my case, that's it.
Yeah, and also one point is both are the same age.
Yeah, right?
Right?
That's it.
Yeah, so that's the difference as well. So I think...
do you know how much is the student debt levels in the UK?
Trillion?
Let me just do a quick search
right
now.
But either way, because I think we have a few more questions to ask. I have a few more questions to ask, right? So for those who are...
Let me just add this in so we can crop it in. It's more than $1.7 trillion
yes.
today.
Yeah.
Dude, do you know how much money that is? Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, is worth 200 plus billion.
Yep.
The student debt combined is like 9 times of Elon Musk net worth. You can solve world hunger with this shit. I'm telling you. Dude.
I mean, Elon Musk tried to, and then the World Hunger Federation didn't able to answer. But yes, so I would say that debt is a real thing. It will come to you every single year until you end the debt. Some people will take decades to finish the debt, and I think for both of us, luckily we are not in debt.
The saddest things would be the uncle, auntie, the makcik who are selling nasi lemak, trying to get their kids to university because my kid can now be a productive member of the society because he has a uni degree, and they go into loans and have to work at night. I'm just like, think about them.
Exactly. So I think for those people who are really thinking about going through the coding bootcamp, right? Because coding bootcamp, there's part-time and full-time. Either way, it's going to be hard. So what are some tips that you've realized after teaching and also at the same time running a bootcamp itself that helped people who become successful software developers? What are things, tips? Yeah, few tips or things that you've seen so far people who are successful, right? Being software developers did versus people who just go through it but had a harder time to look for.
So the one that I'll talk about, one that makes you fail first. It's passive learning. That's what I go through. That's what I went through. Just doing tutorials after tutorials and after
tutorial hell.
And it feels good. Yeah, going through tutorial hell. It feels good going through it because you feel like you're learning. Hey, look, Mom, I'm doing Python today. Hey, look at this project I'm doing in Ruby and Rails. And you're just like jumping around Flutter, Python, C++, JavaScript, React, and learn Vue. I went through that. Because I know that starting from 0 to 1, it's pretty easy learning the basics of Vue. But when it comes to building something production in Vue, you need to spend the time learning the hard parts to be good enough. That's what you're getting paid for, the hard parts, not the easy stuff. So I think, a poor developer will just sit there, watch, learn for a long period of time. And they feel like they're learning, they feel like they're progressing, but show me what you can build. That's a poor developer. Obviously, a good developer is the inverse of that and more. A good developer is someone who's basically always coding. He's typing stuff, not sitting, not watching. He's reading documentations, typing, reading, typing. It's always about reading and typing. It's never about sitting there passively consuming stuff, because that's not what a developer is. A developer is a builder. You need to be able to build and create. If you're not able to build and create, what are you doing? Yeah. So I think that's it. Being able to build and create. That's step one. Step two will be algorithms. Because like I said, you rock climb, right? Rock climbing is a skill, correct? A level 1 rock climber and a level 10 rock climber, that's a big difference, a skill gap. I'm a level 1 guy. You can obviously see that I can't even do some of the basic stuff that you can do, easily. The same comes with programming. If someone has a level 1 level of algorithm solving problem solving kind of mindset, they will always be stuck there. They can't progress because they just physically and mentally cannot, because the programming muscle is just not there yet. They don't know the techniques, they don't know the tips and tricks, they don't know the best practices, they don't know anything. And I think this is something that can be built over time, or you can purposefully go and solve tough algorithms, which is what I did back in the days. So my algorithms were okay, but now they probably suck now. But I actually grinded through a lot of algorithms because I knew that if I was going to start a school back then, I needed to be somewhat technical so that when students ask all these algo challenges, I can solve it for them.
Yeah.
That was the thing that I spent a lot of time on. And the best part about algorithm is it's language agnostic. If you're good with solving algorithms in Python, you're going to be good with JavaScript as well. So that's why I deem that it's something worth learning.
Yeah. So I think two things, right? I mean, the recent one is algorithm.
Yeah.
I do agree that you need to have some sort of like algorithm thinking. I'm not talking about grinding algorithms, but more towards of how you solve problems. I think that's more important. Second is, just building shit without looking through tutorials as much as you can as well.
Yeah.
And reading documentation is, I think, one of the better skills to learn. And people who are listening, what's documentation? Literally reading the whole instructional manual of how to do things.
Yep.
That's it. And if you're able to do that, you can actually progress pretty far. It's a hard skill to learn and master, but something that a lot of developers actually appreciate, because that's something that you have to do at a daily basis as well. And then one thing also that popped up in my mind was, will AI replace developers? It's like, should I even learn coding? Because AI is going to do it anyway. What's your thoughts on that?
If you're able to understand what the AI tells you, then it will make you a better developer. If you're just relying on the AI as a crutch, whenever you're stuck, ask AI to solve it and copy paste. And when I ask you to edit it, you're not able to edit it fast because you need to rely fully on AI, then I guess it's okay in the early days, but in the longer run, it's going to neglect your growth as a developer, because a developer needs to problem solve. If you're leaving all the critical thinking and the problem solving to AI, you're not going to grow as a developer. You're going to slowly stagnate, and the gap between you and a good developer will be bigger and bigger and bigger. So let me answer your question. AI will not replace developers, because the world always needs developers to solve things. If someone used AI to build something and they're not able to edit from the AI, and once you've worked on production databases, production data, or just code bases in production, you're going to understand that this thing is bloated as hell, man. There's a lot of things going on there. At some point, I believe AI may replace developers. At some point. I don't know when that's going to happen, but as of today, not even close. Not even close.
Right. And for those who had never coded before and they've seen videos of like, I just type a bit and then they see code and then they can generate a website or even a game, and they think like, I don't need to code because an AI can do that. So what about those people who haven't even touched code yet and thinking like, I shouldn't learn to code? What's your thoughts?
It doesn't make sense. Show me how you can build something. Just show me. Just if you think you saw a cool video, I saw a cool video of someone who can do rock climbing, and here's how you can be a rock climber in 10 minutes. Can I though? I can't. Here's how you can be a blue belt jiu-jitsu guy in 10 minutes. You can't. So if you see that video and you think you can do it, okay, please be my guest and build something productive that you can use day to day, because you have to learn how to set up your environment, learn how to build in production, learn how to make tweaks and customizations to your own needs, right? Those things require... The world rewards specialists back in the days, right? You need to be a specialist. Always. They always tell you. That's why you go to university. That's why my mom told me to go into a professional paper. The world used to reward specialists. Today, just being able to specialize in one thing is just not enough. You need to be able to aggregate information. You need to know many different things. So you don't just need to know how to code. You need to understand the tools and the environment and everything that goes around coding. It's not just about the act of copy-pasting code. It's about the act of setting things up, building the pipelines, and making customizations to your code and refactoring it, right?
Yeah, I do agree that even because I have a real life case where my friend who knows Python, he's a data analyst in a company, and he was trying to build an application using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to grab some data he was struggling.
Grab some data from an API.
Grab some data from a web scraping like API stuff.
Right.
Like just normal data web scraping.
Just web scraping data
Yeah.
out.
Even for him as a person who does data and SQL of databases, right? He was struggling because he had no web development.
Exactly.
Even
So my question is,
Yeah.
what do you do then? For
Yeah.
someone who's relying on AI, what if AI can't give you the answer? What do you do then?
exactly.
You can't do shit.
Yeah.
If you're a developer and AI can't give you an answer, you can read the documentation, understand it, and use it.
Yeah. So I would say that even for someone who already knows some coding and they want to build their own application without any application experience, it's actually very hard as well. Right. So maybe we can end up with one last question, which is, what is one advice you'll give someone who is thinking to transition into tech?
Yep. I think regardless if you go the self-taught path or a bootcamp path or the university path, to each its own, right? Everything has pros and cons at the end of the day, and you have to decide for yourself what's the path that you want to go on. But I would echo on the advice that your friend gave, that Junjay gave. ABC, always be coding, regardless of what you do, self-taught or boot camps or university. If in any path you find yourself not ABCing, which is not always be coding, then you're on the wrong path. If you find yourself always be coding, it's just a matter of time. 1 month, 4 months from a coding bootcamp, 12 months from a self-taught journey, 4 months from a computer science degree, you do the math yourself, what makes sense. For me, it makes sense to pay for results, pay for time, right? Because if you finish a bootcamp in 4 months and after that, you got a job after that,
It's worth it.
you cover your cost.
Exactly.
You don't have to wait so long. If you take 1 year, you're neglecting 1 year of salary for that. So yeah, make your choice and always be coding.
Yeah. All right. So thanks, Derek, for joining in this podcast. I mean, he will be joining in the future podcast. But I think hopefully everyone here has learned something in terms of like, the story of Derek and how, he went through being a self-taught developer and also getting his first like 6-figure jobs as well. All right. So that's about it. If you like this podcast, share it around and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.